cups of tea about what's going on inside Washington, D.C., what regulators and lawmakers are thinking and working on, and what you and your credit union should be focused on in terms of potential risk areas and areas of opportunity. I'm your host, Ann Petros, Vice President of Regulatory Affairs at NAFCU, and today I am thrilled to be joined by Dan Berger, President and CEO of NAFCU, just a mere few weeks before the official transformation to America's credit unions. And Dan has served as President and CEO at NAFCU for over 10 years now. So as we get closer to nearing the end of his helm here, I'm thrilled to be able to sit down and chat with you.
Well, I appreciate the invite. It's bittersweet. And
I know.
It is. I've been at NAFCU for 18 years and 10 as CEO. And so I'm honored to be invited to another edition of the CUPP.
Oh, of course. Well, this wouldn't exist without you. So, but for those who may not know you very well, how did you first get involved in the credit union industry, and really what attracted you to NAFCU?
I've been a credit union member since I was 9 years old, and
Wow.
growing up in Gainesville, Florida, the University of Florida, where my father was a professor, had a credit union, and all the banking my parents did were at that credit union. My first car loan was at that credit union, and so always very familiar with that credit union. But I was at America's Community Bankers for, 7-8 years. And then my predecessor, Fred Berger, hired Korn Ferry to do a national search for a head lobbyist at NAFCU, to the EVP of Governmental Affairs at NAFCU. And Korn Ferry came calling, and I hit it off with Fred, and the ability to have more responsibility in overseeing 5 divisions, was really exciting, and to see if I could do it.
Yeah, it's a big role.
It was huge, and as you know, you got ledge affairs and reg affairs and compliance and political affairs, and of course, the experts in research and economics and all that stuff under one umbrella, and 24 colleagues. That was an exciting role that I really wanted to see if I could do and participate in. So that's how I got here. I got recruited, and it's been a terrific, 2 decades, 18 years. So.
How is it making the transition from community banking to credit unions?
It was not as. There was anxiety when I first gave notice to
learning
ACB,
curve, that's natural.
to ACB, but 95% of the issues were the same. I mean, it's that last 5% that's 100% of the problem, banks versus credit unions. And there was the credit union language, member, that instead of customer. There's those kinds of things that are real granular, that get a little different. The regulator being a little bit different and getting to know the folks there as opposed to the FDIC and stuff like that. But that's just time and effort and going out and schmoozing and getting to know those folks. So the transition wasn't difficult. It took a few months, but overall, at that time, the members of Congress are still the same. It's just some of the prudential regulators were different. But other than that, it was a pretty easy transition.
Yeah. I guess once you read the Federal Credit Union Act a few times and figure out the difference between federal and state charter, you kind of get the hang of it.
No, it's a dense reading.
Might put you to bed, but it is worthwhile. Looking back on your time at NAFCU as president and CEO, what would you say have been the most impactful moments of your tenure? And let's take it back a couple of steps. Transitioning from EVP to CEO, what was that like? And then what were the most impactful
Transitioning
moments?
to EVP to CEO wasn't very difficult because I was an insider, because I already knew the staff. I knew things that Fred left this place in very good shape, very good shape financially, good shape in membership. There was opportunities to improve upon the accomplishments that he had created. And so I knew things that I wanted to do and change and possibly improve upon. But the transition was fairly easy. But everybody wants the chair till you get the chair, and then you're like, wow, there's a lot of responsibility because you're ultimately responsible for everything. I mean, whatever happens in the mailroom or regulatorily or legislative, it ultimately, even though you have 75, 76 colleagues that help you, it's still ultimately your responsibility in totality. And so it weighs on you a little bit. But the aspects of running a business and being CEO, all of it from the operational standpoint, the finances, the marketing, the communications, beyond the advocacy that I knew and was involved in for a long time, that was actually exciting to be more involved in the granular aspects of the business side of the trade association. So, but it was a pretty easy transition from that standpoint.
And the most impactful moments, let's say, top 3.
Impactful moments, geez. I think first and foremost was opening up our membership to state charters. I think that was pivotal for the growth of NAFCU. But I want people to understand how that happened. The catalyst was after Dodd Frank. And what happened was we had such a great reputation for compliance and for regulatory affairs, lobbying and everything. People wanted the HMDA help. Remember all that HMDA came out of Dodd Frank. We needed help. And so state chartered CEOs started calling our board members. And so, as you know, things traveled down pretty quickly from the board to the CEO and the staff. It's pretty quick going, hey, there's a CEO that's a state chartered and really needs help with HMDA and some guidance and stuff and wants to join but can't. And so I brought that to the board, and the board had a very robust discussion about opening up the state charters. And because we're here to help the credit union industry, and so the board, I think, was very wise in opening up the state charters and allowing them to join because it allowed us to help. Now, the side benefit of that was not the reason we did it, but the side benefit of that is, of course, the membership growth that we experienced because of that. So there was a positive aspect besides just helping additional credit unions out there that were asking for it and needing it, but also from a business side of the ledger, it was very helpful and impactful for NAFCU.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the first thing that came to my mind was Dodd Frank. And I remember stories of, how people were just like hunkering down for weeks.
We were weeks. We were in the boardroom dividing up portions of it. I mean, we had, 24 people reading different sections of Dodd Frank and going through it all. And it was all hands on deck. And that was a pivotal moment because we had some opportunities there, but it's also probably in my career, one of my biggest disappointments was the Durbin Amendment. The first Durbin Amendment passing and stuff and not being able to stop that still bothers me to this day. It's political fraud. They sold a bill of goods out there saying that would lower prices for consumers and everything. And it hasn't done it. My Yoo-Hoo and my Slim Jim at the 7-Eleven cost just the same, if not more, than in the past. So it didn't lower any of the prices that I experienced out there, and none of the consumers got it. So it was political fraud. And so, that was a big disappointment. But I think for me, the most impactful moment for me is the team that we finally got together here in the last few years, yourself included. If you look at our management team, you look at all the staff that we have here, our colleagues throughout NAFCU, we're running on all cylinders. We are just killing it. I mean, our membership growth, our financials, we have a terrific board of directors. I mean, all that just came together, and it was all the hard work of you and your colleagues and putting that team together to have that passion for the credit union industry matters. You can't teach that kind of passion. You can't. You have to recruit that kind of passion. You can train them up on the credit union industry and some of the more granular aspects of the credit union industry, but it's that passion and that energy and that enthusiasm and that, as you know, because I say it all the time, that extreme member service is crucial, and to be responsive to the members.
It is.
And that engagement and being out there and helping the members, that's probably my proudest moment is the team that we have today, right now. I mean, we had great teams over the years, but I think we're really peaked right now. I think it's an incredible team that we have in place.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of enthusiasm, and I know that just from conversations with credit union members that extreme member service is something they really value and hope to see, continue into America's credit unions. I'm sure it will.
Yeah, and I think it will. The board's going to hold Jim and the management team at America's Credit Unions to account. And that was one of the things that everybody, as you know, because we drilled it into everybody, is that return the phone calls, return the emails, and be responsive. And that's what our reputation was. Yeah, we were known for our advocacy and our compliance and our education and all the things like that. But everybody in this building, whether it's the young man in the mailroom, to yourself or me, we get back to people. And that's the most important part. And that's the culture that we created at NAFCU. And so it's been fun to watch unfold. It's been really fun.
A quick response means a lot, even if it's just to commiserate.
Yeah, commiserate or say, I don't have the answer for you, Ann, but I'll get it to you. Like, give me a day or two and I'll get back to you. But just be responsive, and I think people appreciate that responsiveness. And I fully expect it at the new trade association.
Absolutely. I mean, I know, if I call any company customer service line and, you get someone who's really attentive and makes you feel like your voice is being heard and they understand your issue, it makes all the difference.
100%. And just and I think that's what we've done so well. And the folks that run the studio, I mean, Eric and Nick and stuff like that, just being responsive internally, because you have internal stakeholders,
of course,
and then you have external stakeholders, and just being responsive and just having that culture of responsiveness and that service leadership. I mean, it matters, and then it permeates, and then you have that reputation. I mean, your culture permeates outside the company, outside the trade association. And so, yeah, you just a phone call back or an email back. Hey, I'll get right back with you, or it's. But usually we get them the answer right away, and then we respond to them. So that's why they get so impressed with the stuff that you do and compliance does too. So,
on the topic of leadership, what do you think are the top 3 most important qualities of a strong credit union leader?
Communication, and communication. I early in my tenure, I had an executive coach in John Spence, in helping myself as well as the entire NAFCU with the change management we were doing in terms of creating the culture. But communication, the ability to talk about the mission, talk about your values, and really create that culture. And talk, when you talk about your vision, have that strategy behind your vision, and make sure it gets executed. Here's my vision. This is what I think we need to do. Go do it and get out of the way, and you go do it. Like, I mean, you created this. I mean, this is incredible. This podcast has a huge following, and you did it. And you came up with a plan. You provided us with an executive summary. Hey, this is what I like to do. Can we invest in it? So do rock and roll, and you've killed it. It's a fantastic.
Thanks.
And so those are the kinds of things that you want to do. You want that enthusiasm and that passion to give as much information out to the industry, because this is helpful. The discussions that you have and those really powerful VIPs and prudential regulators and people that you invite on this thing is huge. And to have those conversations, the members like that, and they deserve it. That part of their dues dollars, and so it's, but I think it's, communication is absolutely key. I think a focus on culture. I mean, it's so important. I think it's important to have that culture in place, because it gives you the resilience when things go bad. And so, because not everything, there's going to be black swan events. There's going to be another financial crisis. There's going to be another piece of legislation or a regulation that's promulgated that's going to be difficult for the industry. It's just going to happen. Black swan events occur. That's the reason they're called black swan events. And so, but if you have the culture to handle those moments and empower your team and your colleagues to go handle those moments, they'll do it. So culture is really, really key. But you also have to have strong execution. Strategy is important, but strategy is useless if you can't execute. And I think that's what you and everybody within this building is so good at. Yeah, we have the vision, we have the culture, we have the strategy, but the most important part is the execution. And you go out and you actually get stuff done, and that's the stuff that matters.
So what you're describing is a difference between strategy and tactics, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
The on the ground initiatives and work that carries out the vision that is set from the top.
Yeah, and a lot of that is attributed to our board of directors. I mean, they help with the strategy, and they don't get involved in the tactics. That's up to you and your colleagues to figure out how to get things done and the execution. But it's my discussions with the board and the board's direction to me and to staff. That strategy is done at the top. It's not tactical. That's your job. That's Greg Misak's job. That's Brad Thaler's job. You guys figure out how it is. And we'll talk about our change in the studio here or the conferences that we did. We had a meeting. We said, hey, we want to look like a modern, forward-thinking, cutting-edge, innovative trade association. And you get it to Hannah and Eric and Nick, and they ran with it. And the conferences are incredible. I mean, you walk in there, you look like a cutting-edge, innovative, modern trade association. The studio is magnificent because of them executing on that vision and that strategy. And so, but it's important to have that. And there is a difference between strategy and tactics, but the execution is really, really key. A lot of people have a lot of strategies. They have a lot of strategic plans, a lot of business plans, but if you don't execute, it's going to fail.
And strategic plans are very important. Sometimes board members may want to get a little more involved than is appropriate.
Not our board members.
They have some great, tactical ideas. But what's your advice to credit union leaders in terms of managing expectations and that level of involvement?
Well, we've been blessed. I mean, for the 18 years I've been at NAFCU, we've had terrific boards. I mean, the board has been fantastic. Yeah, occasionally a board member would get into some of the tactical issues. And I had one board member ask a question and started diving into some tactical issues. And of course, I didn't do it in front of the entire board. I pulled him aside and I'm like, if you had a board member that said to do this, 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 and this, what did you tell them to do? Oh, I'd tell them to pound sand. And I'm like,
you said it.
But there's ways to handle it and be respectful and professional. But we haven't had many of those. And I can count them on one hand. I mean, our board has been very strategic, extremely supportive of management, extremely supportive of staff. And that's what you want. And that's just developing that trust and that relationship with the board is really, really key.
I know, some smaller credit unions especially may be struggling to find the right talent to fill their board, but you've got to search far and wide, right, to find the best people.
Yeah, and I think it's that's a problem in our industry, and it is make sure that you have a bench and people ready to go, whether they're serving on the supervisory committee or you have an advisory committee of the board and stuff, to start training some folks to be on the board. Because I'm 57 years old, but a 30-year-old board member is going to think differently and have different experiences. So to get those younger board members in there is really important. And I think the diversity of age, the diversity of race and gender, all those components are extremely important because all those experiences are different. And so the boards need to have at least an informal, if not a formal, training program to get some new board members in. And if they don't, then they might need to consider term limits and things like those lines. But I think there's ways to handle it without term limits, but you need to have some, new blood get on the board and get some new thoughts and input, from different folks on the board, from the community. But yeah, that's a problem. It's especially with the smaller ones. It's difficult, and the small ones are struggling. It's hard. It's expensive. It's the compliance costs, the technology costs, the labor costs. All that weighs in. But you and I both know hundreds of small credit unions that are doing an incredible job. They have to work harder than a Navy Federal maybe, because they don't have the resources, and they have to work a little bit harder and smarter. But it can be done. It's just very, very difficult.
Yeah. Like you said, it takes maybe a little more effort, but they can make it work. And many do it very, very well.
Extremely well.
Looking ahead, what do you think will be the biggest threats to credit unions and the most important issues for credit unions to tackle in the next, let's say, 5 years?
I think because of the balance of power in Congress, I think the power shifts directly to the regulators.
Oh, I know that very well.
Into your realm of expertise. It's the prudential regulators, it's the CFPB, Probably some more CFPB and name some more CFPB.
Yeah.
I think you have regulators pushing the envelope beyond their congressional authority and congressional intent. And so those are going to be some major headwinds, I think, for the industry coming up. I'm not so concerned about the congressional side of things. We have plenty of friends in Congress where I think we can get some things passed and some things stopped if necessary, if something hostile gets sponsored. But I think the biggest threat that we have is from the regulatory side. And I think that's going to be a major problem for several years coming. It also depends on who's president in the next election.
Right.
That'll change things. But the other threats are it's competition, and it's competition. Everybody talks about the community banks and regional banks and the big banks. It is, of course, the fintechs, and and it's the kid in the garage in Palo Alto coming up with the next app to compete and try to take market share from credit unions and other community financial institutions. But it's also credit union versus credit union. So the competition is out there. It's real. And so competition, and everything in financial services is becoming commoditized. So then it comes back to having that culture of, being responsive and having the technology partnerships with fintechs so people have access to their money in a frictionless manner and their money's protected and stuff like that. So you can compete and take on the big institutions or the fintechs and stuff like that. It can be done.
It's that relationship banking.
The relationship banking is absolutely crucial. And we're still loved. I mean, the Googles and the Facebooks, they're never going to have that trust that the credit unions have developed over the last 100 years. They try to buy it with ads and stuff, and they can't do it.
That takes time to build.
It takes
Can't do it overnight.
decades. You
Right.
can't do it overnight. But I think one of the other biggest threats is probably the Amazons of the world. I mean, I use
Right,
Amazon
big tech.
Prime. So big tech, everybody trusts it. I use Prime. It's push and click.
Oh,
I
of
see
course,
what I
it's
need.
fantastic.
I need my vitamins. It's buy now. It's gone. So that trust factor that's
Get my
embedded-
groceries delivered sometimes. It's
Yeah,
wonderful.
you get your groceries delivered. I get my books downloaded on Kindle. Everything's push and go. So if they come out with a token or a stable coin, they could be a direct threat pretty quickly because they do have that trust with the consumer. So that concerns me. But again, it goes back to your point. It's that relationship banking. You have to have that.
Yeah, I mean, I think regulators are really concerned about I guess, let's call it proliferation of big tech, right? Especially into financial services. So I know the CFPB is focused on that. I'm sure other regulators will pay close attention.
I encourage them to be focused
FTC,
on
right. I mean, that's
fintechs.
something we actually like that the CFPB
But they
is
should
doing.
have. They should have be under
Yeah.
the same regulatory schematic as
Sure,
depository
if you're offering
institutions.
financial services, you're
And
playing
then-
in our ballpark.
Absolutely. And one of the largest quote unquote banks out there is Starbucks. They have billions of dollars on their app. And then they make investment income from that. But you think about it, people have tons of money on their app and they're utilizing. And so, yeah, the CFPB should be looking at them.
Tons of money that's not insured.
100% accurate.
Yeah. What do you think about all this junk fee stuff? It's administration wide. So, I mean, even the FTC is taking a look at this. We hear all the regulators paying attention.
Yeah, the FTC's got some things they got to take care of in their own house first. But I think the junk fee was a brilliant marketing tag to get out there. But it's a misnomer. It's not accurate. And so I think you'll see some pushback, whether it's lawsuits, in legal pushback. I think you'll continue to see congressional pushback. I think there's a lot of problems out there with them trying to cap things. You don't have the congressional authority to do that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so when you're pushing those limits that way, I think you're going to see the NAFCUs of the world or America's credit unions in the future pushing back on those pretty aggressively.
Well, we have to. I mean,
Absolutely.
junk fees don't exist in financial services. I sound like a broken record. I feel like I say that all the time, but it's true. And it is just so frustrating to see, time and time again, this rhetoric, especially from the CFPB. So, hopefully it clicks. At
Yeah,
some
but
point in the
you and
scene.
your team have been doing a great job. You have to push back at every
Yeah.
opportunity and write the letters and do the op-eds and all the stuff that you're doing. It all matters because you can't leave a charge like that unchallenged because then
Right.
it sticks and then it's in the mindset of the consumers and stuff like that. And then and it starts being permeated everywhere. So you have to respond to it, and you have been. And I suspect you'll continue to do so with the America's credit unions.
Well, and I understand and respect that, consumers may feel really frustrated, right, when they see fees that they don't understand.
Right.
But I'd argue that that's just not the case when it comes to, the products and services that you get from your credit union or bank.
And
But
the disclosures associated with those fees.
there are tons of disclosures, many that were put in place by Dodd Frank.
Yep.
The Dodd Frank Act required a lot, and for example, mortgage lending. So it just doesn't quite add up. But I will be the first to tell you that, when it comes to like resort fees, I could do without. But
Yeah, they show up on the bill. And then I think the one that bothers me the most is when my daughter buys concert tickets and they're like ticket master
Oh,
some of
yeah.
the fees. And
That
yeah,
too.
and there's some areas they can focus on that don't have the appropriate disclosures that they should to protect consumers.
exactly.
And so, but it's not in the not in the credit union industry.
Right. All right. Now, what is your hope for the credit union industry in the years to come?
I would like to see them continue to thrive. And I think that was one of the things that we focused on at NAFCU, as you very well know, is that we want to help credit unions grow. And you have to grow to compete. And I'm not saying grow for the sake of growing. Grow smartly, have a plan, execute appropriately. But in order to compete in this realm, you have to have some economies of scale. You have to grow. But I really want to see credit unions thrive. And you don't want to go back to the robber baron or when the 4 banks controlled everything in this country in the beginning of the last century. You just don't want 4 banks controlling the entire financial services marketplace. It's not good for the consumer. It's not good for Main Street. It's not good for communities. And so I want to see thousands of credit unions still in existence providing those banking services that are needed out there, especially in the areas where there's financial deserts, whether it's in urban areas where banks are pulling out or rural areas where banks are pulling out. I want to see credit unions continue to thrive. And then that's why we exist. That's our job, is to fight for credit unions and make sure they have a legislative and regulatory environment that they can thrive. And you and your team have been doing such a great job at it. I think that needs to continue in order for that to occur.
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, part of thriving, in this day and age means innovating and, providing the convenience that consumers are looking for.
Yep.
So I think, at least on the regulatory side of things and certainly, legislatively, there are some opportunities to make it easier for credit unions to, partner with fintechs or adopt innovative solutions that
Yeah,
help
and
members.
then take it a step further. There's opportunities for them to invest in opportunities that are out there,
Right.
whether it's the Circle Fund or the Circle Collective, and those folks, investing in fintechs that are, helping credit unions, with their technology platforms. Those kinds of things are really important to be able
Well,
to
I'll have to have a
participate in.
conversation with the NCUA, but that's a
No,
subject
whole
for a
nother-
different time.
Fair enough. But I think there's opportunities out there. But to your partnership, as much as we occasionally beat up on fintechs, credit unions can't do it alone. They have to partner with fintechs in order to provide the technology and the services that their current members want, but more importantly, the younger generation demand. And so and most credit unions don't have the financial wherewithal. You can't have 200 programmers like Bank of America does. So you have to partner with a fintech to get the appropriate apps and technology platforms to provide those services.
Right, need to outsource.
You have to, absolutely have to partner, absolutely. Or through NAFCU services, same thing. I mean, Randy and his team, they have partners that provide the same type of services and provide those partnerships and platforms that'll help you grow and thrive with various products and services. So yeah, you have to look for those partners that'll help you grow.
Yeah. All right. Well said. Dan, any other, thoughts, comments for our viewers? Maybe can you let us know what's next? I know everybody's really curious.
Well, the board asked me to stay to the end of the year, which I'm very appreciative and agreed to do. There's a few people have called and I'm in talks with and stuff. But take a little time off and spend some time with my family a little bit and sort through some of this stuff. There'll definitely be some fishing involved.
I was just going to say, I know you love
maybe
fishing.
Maybe a little golf, a little fishing, but and as you know me well, I don't rest on my laurels. I'm type A, go, and so there's never going to be a complete retirement for me. So it's and again, I also have a daughter at Vanderbilt, so I still have to work. So,
a few more years.
Yeah, exactly right. And no, there's some things that I'm looking at. So,
all right. Well, we're eager to see the next chapter of Dan Berger. So,
but
Dan, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say one of the final thoughts is that I am going to absolutely miss you and the rest of the colleagues here, and the people in the control room there, and Eric and Nick are two of the best in the business, and we have a great team here, and that's the part that I'm going to miss the most.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to try to not get emotional, but
I know my allergies are kicking in a little bit here, and I said I wouldn't do it. And,
well, Dan, thank you so much for everything that you've done for NAFCU, our credit union members, the credit union movement. We all owe you our sincerest gratitude.
Well, I appreciate it.
So I will certainly miss you. I know
thank you.
Many others who will as well. So,
thank you.
Thank you. All right, that does it for today's episode. So if you enjoy watching the CUPP, please subscribe, hit the like button, turn on your notifications to receive alerts for future episodes. And as always, let us know about topics you'd love to hear about in future episodes. We love hearing from you. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time.